sector and the health sector. So it's a wide conversation for the next 2 hours, and also quite important for me to note that we'll be conducting this particular bulletin in 2 languages, that is English and Kiswahili. So whichever language that you're comfortable with to send in your feedback, please do so, because we'll be here for you for the next 2 hours. My name is Cynthia Nanjala. Karibu.
Na mtazamaji, kama alivyosema mwenzangu Cynthia Nanjala, ni mjadala ambao tumekuwa tukiufuatilia kwa kina kwa siku nzima, na tuko hapa kuangalia tu baada ya kusoma kwa bajeti hiyo katika bunge la kitaifa na waziri Mbadi, ni matukio yepi yanayokuathiri wewe mtazamaji au Mkenya wa kawaida, na ni yepi ambayo umeweza kunufaika ama utaweza kunufaika na bajeti hii. Mimi ni Belinda mtazamaji, na tuko na wageni wetu kwenye studio. Tuko na Ruth, mwanadada pale, Ruth Bolo, ambaye ni mtaalamu wa uongozi na masuala ya kijinsia, na tuko na Bernard Cheng ambaye ni mtaalam au mshauri wa uendelezaji wa biashara, na niko na Juma Ngule ambaye ni mwenyekiti wa ODM, chama cha ODM wa vijana kutoka eneo bunge la Westlands. Mtazamaji, karibu.
Right, you're welcome, and so thank you very much, gentlemen, as you get to engage with us for the next 2 hours. Also important to note, we are to be joined by one more person, that is Ngugi Ndegwa, who is an executive director to Ustawi Kenya. So let's get this conversation started. Ruth, I'd love to begin with you. The Cabinet Secretary has just this afternoon concluded his address, and one of the things that he's mentioned is that it is important to note that this particular budget raises no taxes and introduces no taxes. From where you sit, what's your view?
Thank you so much for having me. Allow me to start by sending my condolences to the family of Albert Ojwang. Right. And it's interesting that he says that, because there are a lot of amendments that have been done. So when he says it's introducing no tax and it's raising no tax, that is false. Because if you look at, and I'll give 2 examples, that is one of alcohol and one of the hospitality industry. If you look at the alcohol taxes, that are being introduced in that particular sector, what it's going to do is that it's going to raise the costs. The costs for alcohol are going to rise up. And so eventually we will now see the locally brewed or illegally brewed, for that matter, alcohol becoming very popular. So things like changa, things like busa are now going to come back. Right. I know we used to have the small packets that used to be smuggled in from Uganda. In my village, we used to call them ruata ruata. So those ones are about to come back. It's very small sachets, but with very high alcohol percentage. Look at things like fertilizers. They might not be having a tax, but when the exemptions have been removed, that is still an introduction of taxes. Look at some of the items that are used in our hospitals. They have removed some taxes on pharmaceutical products, but on the raw products that then go into manufacturing some of those pharmaceuticals, they have removed the exemptions. Right. So essentially the prices either remain the same or go up, because the manufacturers of those raw products will push the costs towards the consumer. So it's not entirely true. Yeah. A lot of exemptions have been removed. There are a few good things here and there, but it is quite false and quite misleading to say that there are no taxes that have been introduced.
All right, and we'll be coming to get your views in just a few minutes, but allow us to take a look at just some key numbers within the budget 2025-2026, the figures and what those numbers are. If we already enjoy, you can let me know, so that we look at some of the numbers, including, the total budget, which is at 4.23 trillion Kenyan shillings. The projected revenue is at 3.3 trillion shillings. The deficit is at 1 trillion shillings. We'll be talking about that. How do we finance that big deficit? And, largely, what other way other than borrowing? Now we also have the recurrent expenditure at 3.1 trillion shillings. The development expenditure, pesa za kujenga barabara na hospitali, zote at 643.9 billion shillings. And then the county governments, which get about 474 billion shillings. All right, we have Ngugi Ndegwa with us joining. Thank you very much, Ndegwa, for your time. He's the executive director at Ustawi Kenya. Karibu sana, good to have you. Right.
Naam, ningependa kuanza na wewe Ngugi. Tukiangalia kuwa matumizi ya serikali yamepewa trilioni 7.119. Hiyo ni kumaanisha kuwa maendeleo imepewa mgao kidogo. Kuna masuala ambayo yanachangia katika kwa hiyo matumizi ya serikali, kwa mfano kuongezeka kwa washauri wa rais. Je, ni swala ambalo linaweza kupunguzwa ndio ili tuweze kupunguza haya matumizi katika serikali kuu?
Kwanza kabisa niseme shukran for having me, na pia niseme pole sana kwa kuchelewa. I guess a lot of activities happening in town and so traffic. Na kwa huu mjadala nafikiria kwamba kuna mengi ambayo yanafaa kufanywa. And to start with, I think we have seen a slower rate of development at 4.3, which is lower than what we had in the other year, 2023. And this could be attributed to the many things that the government has done, including expanding what we will call maybe advisors, and expanding the many people that have joined the government that should not have been there. And I think it is a thing that the president should do to reduce or to cut costs, or to cut spending within the government, and also to cut spending within public offices. But also a lot to be desired in what we are seeing in terms of an example of which we have seen an increase from 2,000 to 10,000 in terms of what we call per diems, which could also be another hole that we could lose a lot of money. Okay. But even as we say that, it is important that we remember the government has gone a long way into wastage of public funds, and we can not only blame that on the broad-based government, but also on the failure of the president and his government to take control as it were. Mm-hmm. So I think there is a lot to be desired, and I also think that justice has not been done in terms of what we have as the finance bill for 2025-2026, as we would have wished to have it done.
Right.
Yes.
All right, Bernard, I'd love to get your views when the Cabinet Secretary points to key sectors in the economy that they want to spend more on. He mentioned agriculture, mentioned MSMEs, mentioned housing, talked about the digital superhighway as well. Is this proof enough that we can get our economy even much more at a higher growth rate than what we have now, putting in mind those key economies, and how much do they contribute really to bettering Kenya's economy?
Okay. Thank you very much, Cynthia.
Right, the microphone. It's okay, proceed.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It is an honor. I take it as a privilege to be part of this panel. I don't take it for granted, because there are 8 billion people on the earth. So for me to be chosen, grateful to God. Then also just to send the sincere condolences to the family of Ojwang. Yeah. I think our nation is at a very tragic moment. The things that are happening, I am in the marketplace, and one of the things I enjoy listening to is the conversations, even when you are buying vegetables. The current conversation is very, very hot. Mm-hmm. So coming back to your question, I was just listening to the budget as the CS was reading it. And to me, yes, there are very good figures that have been mentioned. And one thing that caught my attention actually was in the digital sector. Mm-hmm. And CS mentioned about how they have set a large chunk of money. I might not be able to give figures exactly, but the things I heard, like the improving the infrastructure for the digital, and he mentioned the creative arts. Yes. He mentioned about the accessibility of the internet. And then he talked about putting together the places where the youth can be able to work. To be the very point, we are coming, the current government, one of the challenges that they are good, and there are some question marks. Allocation is one thing, but the real work comes to the nitty-gritties about putting it to work. I was, last time when we were analyzing the 2024 budget, I think Fred, the manager, asked me one question, which was very interesting, and I can bring it here on board, because Kenyans don't have a problem with paying the taxes. If I pay taxes, but when I'm driving my car along the road, I don't have potholes and everything. Yeah. If my children can be able to access education in public school easily. We are talking about the citizen, the common mwananchi. And one of the people joke about this thing about living $1 a day. How many people are living like $1 a day? So to me, it's about the coming to nitty-gritties. And then I think my friend just mentioned it about the public, the wastage from the executive.
Yeah.
The other day somebody was saying, we don't have money to pay teachers for education, but we have money to repair and refurbish a state house, which is still in good condition. So I think our priority, so sometimes we are just being given figures, but I think as the citizens, we need to come to that level of accountability and hold our leaders accountable. So what the real thing is about, will we see it? Like we are told how many billions have been given to the agriculture. Like one thing about agriculture in this nation, Africa is the next big thing. Most of the foodstuff that are eaten across the world are coming from Africa. But in our, we don't have like the manufacturing, like the job economy that people are crying about is because we don't have the manufacturing facilities that can absorb the people.
All right.
No. Bwana Juma Ngule, kama kijana na unatoka katika chama cha chungwa cha ODM. Bwana Bernard ameongelea kuhusu kuwajibishwa kwa viongozi. Na wakati huu bajeti hii ni muhimu kwa sababu imejumuisha viongozi wa upinzani kulingana tofauti na mwaka jana, wakati viongozi wa upinzani, hata ukiangalia muonekano wa baadhi ya wabunge bungeni wakati Waziri Mbadi alikuwa anasoma bajeti hii, walikuwa kwa ukimya, wakati wa kwenda kumalizia walikuwa wanamshangilia. Hiyo ni kumaanisha kwamba bajeti hii imepokelewa vyema. Mswada huu wa fedha mwaka 2025 mwaka 2026 utapitishwa tu bila pingamizi yoyote au ukosoaji wote ule.
Asante sana kwa fursa hii. Na kama kijana, kwanza kitu ambacho nitafanya cha kwanza, nitaomba moment of silence ya sekunde 2 kwa rafiki yetu, ndugu yetu Albert ambaye alimalizwa na serikali. Kwa hivyo dakika moja tu. Haya, asanteni sana kwa heshima yake yote. Asante sana. Unajua wanasiasa kuna mambo mengi sana, na ukiangazia mambo mengi especially ya wanasiasa wana ubinafsi mkubwa sana. Na mimi kama kijana mwanachama wa ODM, mwaka uliopita ukizingatia mambo ambayo yalikuwa yanaendelea, tulikaa tukaangalia serikali ya Rais William Samoei Ruto. Ilikuwa kwa kweli imeyoma, haipo tena. Baba mwenyewe akatuambia wacha amsaidie, ampatie experts. Na one of the experts ambaye amepeana mtaalamu. Sisi tulikuja kuokoa jahazi ambalo lilikuwa lishaanza kuzama. Hii serikali ilikuwa imeenda tayari, sababu tunajua kwa kweli hawana mwelekeo. Ukiangalia hata mambo ambayo yanaendelea leo, kila ambacho ukiona wabunge wanapiga makofi, wewe jua mwananchi unaumia. Unajua huyu ni mtaalamu wetu na sisi tunamjua vizuri sana kama wana ODM. Ni mtaalamu, ukisikia wanampigia makofi wanashangilia, jambo la kwanza ambalo tunaelewa. Na ukiangazia mambo mengi ambayo yamezungumziwa kwenye bajeti ya leo, kwa kweli si mambo ya mkulima mdogo, si mambo ya vijana, si mambo ya mama mboga, na hakuna masuala yoyote ya Wanjiko, ya hustlers, mambo ya bottom up hatujayaona. Na mtaalamu wetu tumemtuma, kwa kweli tulimtuma ili aweze kusaidia nani? Rais William Samoei Ruto.
Si mwananchi.
Hapana, William alikuwa ametolewa, Rais William samahani. alikuwa amejoroshwa sana. No. Na sisi kama vijana haswa ambao tuko kwenye broad based, bajeti ya mwaka huu 2025-26 kwa kweli hatujafurahia, kwa sababu mambo mengi ukiangazia ambayo yamezungumziwa kwenye bajeti hiyo, hakuna jambo lolote ambalo mwananchi haswa vijana wanafurahia. Nimeangazia kuna mambo mengine niliona wanaangazia hata kutax our content creators. Mpaka anaangalia hapo ndo mboga ya wananchi wako. Vijana tunatafutia hapo kwa sababu hatuna chochote. Na mimi mambo ambayo ukiniambia kuwa wabunge wetu walipiga makofi, yani ndio mwanzo tu. Ndio mwanzo, mambo yanakuja kuwaka vizuri na mambo yatachemka hivi karibuni. Wakianza kujadili basi hapo ndipo mtajua, kwa sababu kuanzia leo sasa huu ndio mwanzo tu. Sisi tunaenda kuzungumza na vijana wetu, tutawaambia na tutatuma viongozi wetu ambao tuliwachagua, ambao waende wa advise our experts ambao wameenda kusaidia nani? President William Samoei Ruto.
Right.
Shukran.
I'll come to you, Ruth, because you are really nodding, especially especially on the point of the content creators. You know, it's such an oxymoron because the CS says they want to invest more in the digital superhighway, 12.7 billion shillings to support the ICT sector and the infrastructure and other huge amounts of money. And so for him now to also impose sort of a 3% digital tax for content creators to be able to, you know, suffer, I mean, where's the math? The math is not mathing, basically, yeah.
It's funny, that's a tax that didn't exist. Now it exists. And they're saying there are no new taxes. But anyway, I'd like to just start by touching on something that he said in terms of our members of parliament and our representatives clapping. If you looked at parliament today, it was almost empty. Vis-a-vis, and I still remember vividly the numbers that were there when we were impeaching the former president.
Deputy president.
The former deputy president,
right.
Sorry. And so just looking at that, it makes me wonder, what are the priorities of our members of parliament? Who do they represent? Could it possibly be a message, or could it possibly be true that executive hasn't captured the legislative arm? And that is why some of them feel that they should not attend, because if their political parties and their government has said that, or rather the executive has said, this time around must pass, they don't see the need to be there. And so it raises some questions, and it's quite unfortunate. I think also I saw that they had introduced and had allocated some funds for BRT, and we've had this conversation time and time again, but every time they want to change the transport system, then that becomes an issue. But this time now that they have allocated those funds, I'm crossing fingers that it will actually be implemented, that the funds will not be diverted to something else. It is a tough space, and it's not just for the content creators, but it's also for, think about all the young men and women who sell online, because they cannot afford shops. They go online and they sell their handbags online. They open their online shops from the comfort of their homes, and they will sell leather belts there, and they will do the deliveries. So what this is doing really, it is going to change that ball game completely. It's now definitely going to hurt the young people who cannot afford to, because getting a physical location is not just a shop. There are licenses that are there. There are different permits. Now they've even, in Nairobi, there is the fire permit, and on top of having the fire permit, you need to have a fire extinguisher. On top of having a fire extinguisher, if you're selling clothes, for every dummy more than 2, you pay 1,500 per dummy. So there are so many costs that go into it that young people and women cannot afford. So when you're now going into their safe haven, the place that they have run to, not only are you crippling that particular sector and those particular businesses, but what you're doing is saying that you don't support SMEs. You're talking about having partnerships with the US and other countries. While that is the same, an industry that is yet to pick up, an industry that is just being, it's not even blown up, it's just being identified, it's just being, people are now discovering it. That is the industry that you're going after. So you are right, it is between a rock and a hard place, because on one hand, they are showing us all this goodwill, tumetenga, tumeweka, this is the amount we have allocated, the investors that we are inviting. But on the other hand, they are going after sectors that are just being discovered. And so this is really going to cripple that industry, and it's definitely going to affect a lot of young people.
Right. When you say they're going after sectors that have just been discovered, is this to mean that there are other sectors that they can really go for and go hard?
I definitely believe so.
Okay.
The betting sector is one of them. If you look at the nicotine sector as well, if you look at the aeronautical space as well, so there are quite a number that have been looked at. And why I say they are going for the small dog is in quotes, is because, number one, look at the taxes that are now there in terms of importation of vehicles. It is now cheaper to import a Lexus than it would to import, a smaller vehicle in terms of taxes. So what are they communicating? And that's, I think that's my biggest worry. They might not have introduced or increased the tax. They might not have directly touched the common household items. But if you deeply look at the bill, and I'm not saying that the bill is entirely bad, but the truth is that there are sectors that we needed to have let to grow, and the digital sector is one of them. People had now started going into crypto. People had now started, doing lessons online. Therapy is something that's very expensive in Kenya, but now we have online therapists. You've now gone after that. So it's something that's definitely going to touch on every sector, but most importantly, it's going to cripple or stagnate a sector that has just been discovered.
All right.
Bwana Bernard, ulikuwa umeitikia kwamba kuna zile sekta ambazo zinafaa kuangaziwa au kuongezwa ushuru zaidi au kutozwa ushuru zaidi kuliko kumkandamiza yule mwananchi ambaye anajaribu kujitafutia, mwananchi wa chini. Unaweza eleza sekta hizo ni gani?
Asante sana Belinda. Najaribu kuzungumza kwa Kiswahili. Nilipata C+, hiyo ndio subject nilipata kidogo sana shuleni, lakini bado naweza communicate. Ukiangalia hii nchi yetu ya Kenya, utapata ya kwamba yule mwananchi wa kawaida, na ndio nimezungumza ile jambo nilikuwa nasema kwa Kiingereza, watu wa finance ama investment wanaongea juu ya mwenye anatumia $1 kwa kila siku. Bali ukipata mtu wanasema that is something wanatumia kupima poverty line, ama ile kiwango chini sana. Ukiangalia nchi utapata ya kwamba wale wadogo sana ama wenye wanafanya biashara ndogo ndogo, ndio Ruth amezungumza ya kwamba saa hizi ili uanze duka kidogo itabidi uchukue license ya City Council. Na siku hizi wanaita unified. Sasa kuna vile actually jana kuna one of my clients were just telling me he used to pay license for 15,000. Yesterday she was paying 40,000. And it is unified. And even in the system, you can do nothing about it. So the reason why people aliongea juu ya watu wakubwa kama kuna sectors zingine, they are big fish who are running multi-billion businesses.
Yeah.
And they are evading taxes. But wewe mtu mwenye unajaribu kujikwamua maisha ili at least upate chakula yenye mtoto ama familia yako wanaweza jimudu nayo, ndio unapata unagongwa sana. Siku hizi ni ngumu sana ukinunua kitu like kwa supermarket. Kitu moja napenda sana mimi ni kwenda kufanya shopping ama window shopping, kuangalia tu ile bei za vitu zinaendelea. Ona kitu kama bei ya unga, unapatanga kuna vile hiyo price yake inapanda na inashuka. So inamaanisha ya kwamba ukiwa na nilikuwa nafanya research wiki mbili iliyopita, mwenye alikuwa na 1,000 1990 na mwenye alikuwa na 1,000 sasa hivi. Wanasema yule jamaa wa 1990 anaweza fanya vitu nyingi. Nakumbuka vizuri sana nikitumwa na shilingi 5 kwenda kununua soda, kwenda kununua chumvi, na bado unarudisha cheki. Lakini siku hizi I have a 9-year-old daughter. And when you send her, there's a way she does her calculation. Hata nakwambia hii haitatosha. Like we do a refilling of water at 35. So when you give her like 50 bob, anakwambia hii inabaki sio ni yangu sasa. So hiyo inaonyesha ya kwamba uchumi ile nguvu ya pesa iko chini. Na kama hujajimudu sana kama uko tu na njia moja ya kupata pesa itakuwa ngumu. Asante sana.
Right. Ngugi, I'll come to you. They've raised serious questions on sectors that need to be taxed and those that need not be taxed. But if you look at one of the key, I'd say, lines or statements in this bill is that it should focus on sealing tax loopholes such as evasion and non-compliance. Last year, 2024-2025, we didn't have a bill, we had supplementary budgets, but it was on improving the tax or widening the tax bracket, actually, that's the best term, widening the tax bracket. So we seem to be having a tax problem. Carriers seem to not just get it right. They've missed their targets in, year out, despite the fact that there's a 3.6% increase from the period July 2024 and April 2025. Is this to mean that if they can seal tax loopholes and ensure there's compliance and widen the tax bracket, then we can get enough money in the country?
I think there is enough money in the country. And I think it is very possible to get enough for the government to collect enough revenue without overburdening the common mwananchi. And I say this because in sociology we say that the reinforcement that is used must be consistent with the results that you want to get.
Right.
And there is no consistency. In short, what I'm saying is that the government has tried to put reinforcement such as penalties, and you will see that in the bill they have increased penalties and trying to reach the one who is not compliant.
Right.
But that cannot work while you keep increasing the tax bracket, because when you do that, you demotivate the one who will have complied. And I think it will have been much easier for the government to accept to spread these taxes across board, so that it becomes something small that is consistent, and that business people can be able to predict, even in the next the bills that will come in the next years, that it is be predictable. And people are able to know that, as he's saying, that the prices of these goods that we are selling are not likely to fluctuate in the future, and we are not likely to face losses. So I think based on that, the government has failed to motivate the people that they hope to tax. And also you will see that there are items that they have moved from zero rated to what we will call tax exempt. And you will see that this is a huge problem, because when you move these products from zero rated to tax exempt, it means that these people cannot ask for a refund if they find now in the coming year that they have paid more than they were expected to do.
Right.
So I think this is demotivating. And these are some of the things that are making the project of the government, this project, which is the Kenya Kwanza government, to fail. Another thing is that while they have ensured that they do not tax, overburden the income tax, they have moved these taxes to the VAT, which is also a spectacular failure.
Right.
Because when you do that, now you cripple businesses. You cripple medium enterprises, which will have reason maybe to even give more taxes than you wanted, maybe to collect from them. And you will see that them going after these businesses that require a limit of more than even 5 years to be able to put themselves in a place where they are able to be productive by limiting what they will call the grace period, in which they are supposed now to be filing losses and filing nil until they are able to be at par with other businesses.
Right.
Then that cripples these businesses. And we are at a point when many businesses have fallen. And continuing that also cripples the common mwananchi, who did not have a job and opted to go the business way to find himself something to do.
Right.
Yes.
Juma, I'll come to you. The debt burden, we just seem to, we can't get out of it one way or the other. Because when the head of state, President William Ruto, came into office 2 years ago, I believe, yes, 2 years ago, he was very particular on the fact that the government then, which he was part of, had borrowed a lot. But as we speak, our debt is at 11.36 trillion shillings. When he came into office, it was about 8 trillion shillings. And we are also having the tax or the revenue collection, shortfall. And so it's a sort of like a hard line for the government to work on. What do they do? What other option do they have other than borrow? Because there's still a gap. There's still deficits every financial year or every budget cycle. There are tax revenue collection gaps. And so is there any other option really other than borrowing, basically?
Thank you so much, Cynthia. I think the biggest problem that we have as a nation, we don't have a president who is intentional. What they say and what they do is totally different. Angalia kama rais wetu William Samoei Ruto aliingia ofisini na ahadi tele, na alikuwa amepromise wa Kenya mambo mazuri sana, and everybody believed him, especially wakati alikuwa anauzia watu mambo ya hustler project, akiwaambia kazi ni kukopa tu, na akaahidi wa Kenya wengi sana, akamwambia my government hatutaenda kukopa. But trust me hakuna mtu amekopa pesa nyingi kuliko President William Samoei Ruto. So the biggest problem tuko nayo ya deni, this burden that we have right now, we just need to change the regime. Na shida kubwa tuko nayo ni viongozi. Ukiangalia viongozi wengi wamekaa hapo, hata our experts wengi ni wajukuu na watoto wa Moi regime. Even when you look at the way they see things and they handle things, surely these guys are not pro people, but they are just after themselves gaining something. Look at the issue of tax evasion. How many people are escaping to pay tax? Who are those category of people?
Yeah.
Majority of them, they are politicians. Hawa ni watu ambao wana biashara, watu wakubwa sana, and most of them, and I want to give a good example of the senator from Nakuru. Kuna wakati amekuwa na shida kubwa sana na serikali, eti hajalipa ushuru, lakini after ameagree na akawa rafiki ya President William Samoei Ruto, kesi hiyo hakuna mtu ameisikia. Najua wengi wenu mnajua mambo ya Keroche. Kulikuwa na shida kubwa sana ambayo Wakenya walikuwa wanasema hajalipa, hata KRA ilimuendea. Saa hii ukikosana na president, the first mistake watakupata nayo, watakutumia KRA. Meaning that watu ambao wana shida ya kulipa ushuru ni nani? If you disagree, unajua someone like me hakuna shida because I can say anything about the government, because at the end of the day hata nikifuatiliwa as a young man, as a person who has nothing, these guys they cannot do anything to me because there is no mistake young or in the common Kenyans have done. So tatizo kubwa la kukopa pesa ni watu ambao wamekalia viti executive. Waswahili wanasema samaki akioza anaanzia kwenye kichwa. Sasa kichwa cha Kenya kimeoza, and right now we don't have anybody amekaa kule juu. The topmost leadership kwa Kenya wote they are not pro people, and that is why you will see them. President anakuja anaongea vizuri, anasema okay, hatutawahi kopa pesa, tunataka kugenerate our own money, tupange maneno hapa, tupange mkulima mdogo ili tuweze kuwa na ushuru wa kutosha. Mambo hayo yote ni political statements ambayo hayatuhusu kama wa Kenya. Angalia ni pesa ngapi President William Samoei Ruto amekopa. Kwa hivyo deni ambalo tuko nalo hatuwezi kuliepuka at the moment unless we change the leadership of this country. Kwa sababu at the moment hakuna kitu. Look at the current budget ya mwaka huu. Look at the expenditure ambayo wameweka. It is the highest, 3 trillion. Sasa surely hiyo pesa watatoa wapi? Wenyewe ambao wanafanya biashara, ambao ni wafanyabiashara wakubwa, they don't pay tax. Watu ambao wanalipa ushuru ni Wakenya wa kawaida, wananchi wa chini. Right now tunaambiwa hakuna tax wameongeza. Ni story. Kwa sababu gani? Look at the pay wajaguza, true. Lakini look at the VAT. Ina affect nani? Wewe na yule mshahara wako wa shilingi 20,000, mkate wako umeguzwa mahali kiujanja, wanajua. Akina mama wameguza zile nini sanitary pads zao, wameguza mahali. Kwa hivyo tukiambiwa kuwa tunaenda kuepuka na kuongeza mambo ya raise revenue, ni ile ambayo vijana wanaita stories za jaba. Na kama kuna mtu ambaye ana stories za jaba nzuri ni Rais William Samoei Ruto, and he's a master of that. Kwa hivyo Wakenya lazima tujipange vizuri, hatuna option nyingine. Sasa amekalia kile kiti, lakini lazima tuangalie ni vipi tutakuja kungoa hii serikali ya wakora ambayo imekaa kule juu, sababu hilo ndio tatizo kubwa sana la Wakenya. Yeah.
Naam. Bwana Bibo, leo nikuje kwako. Juma pale ameongelea kuhusiana na ushuru, kuhusiana na deni la kitaifa. Serikali haiwezi kufanya kazi kwa bajeti ndogo. Manake Bwana Mbadi akiwa mbele ya bunge la kitaifa akisoma mswada wa fedha amesema bajeti ya Kenya haizi kwa peji 3 tu peke yake. Hiyo ni kuashiria kuwa lazima tu ikue kubwa. Hatuwezi kuwa na bajeti ndogo kukidhi yale mahitaji yetu kutokana na mapato yaliyokusanywa peke yake.
Asante. Wacha nianze na kusema, unajua ninatoka Homa Bay na Kiswahili sio mgumu chetu. So allow me to respond in English. But I think it's a dicey situation, and why I say that is because we are a developing country, and so we have a lot that needs to be done, but we also have loans that need to be serviced. So we are in a situation whereby wewe uko na zile mobile app loans, wamesha kutumia notice, they will start contacting your contacts and sending
Contact
SMS.
list
But you
yote.
also need to pay for your tokens. So do you service your loan or do you pay for your tokens and buy food? So that's the situation where we are at as a country. But there's something that can be done. And to refer to your first question, what can be done is, number one, we can ask Kenyans in the diaspora to invest. I always like to use the SGR story, because when SGR was being built, a lot of Kenyans in the diaspora kept on saying, do not borrow. We have enough money as Kenyans in diaspora to finance this thing as investors. Let us invest in it and give us shares. We will put enough money to finance this thing. So I think that's an item that we need to look at. Are we able to invest? And for investment to happen, then the government must just rebrand themselves. Gone are the days where someone would tell you, invest in government bonds. Right now, people don't even trust government with their money. Someone even with 5 shillings right now does not want to take it to the bank. Because there's so much that is going on, and in terms of getting justice for your small amount that has been lost, you're not sure whether you'll get it. So that's an avenue that needs to go. But 2, we've got government bodies or operations that are meant to be bringing in money. We've got institutions that are supposed to be making money for the government, but what are we seeing? They're making losses year in, year out. In fact, it is the government that needs to keep pumping in money to those exact outfits. So the same way that there was a law that said if you have been filing nil returns for 7 years, you need to close your business. Now let's turn it and say that if these institutions have been filing nil for a certain number of years, they need to close down. We cannot be, as a business person, you cannot keep on injecting money in a venture that is failing year in, year out. If that is not the way, they need to start making money, because that's another avenue that we can raise this, is it 1 trillion gap that is there? I think another way that is there is in terms of taxes, and you touched on it, is KRA right now is looking like the enemy of the people. And they have been very consistent. Have you seen someone who is working so hard to be your enemy? That is what KRA has done. From how they ask for the money to how they sent, the men in the uniform, and it became a whole thing to allowing this information to go out. It got to a point, and I'll disagree a little bit about Keroche, because it's gotten to a point, if you need to protect your business, you have to get into politics. That's the only way for businesses to survive, which is a very wrong notion. What is happening is that they have realized businesses like Keroche, EBN, Safaricom can afford lawyers. So now they're going for the middle income, the next tier of entrepreneurs, and they're also going for the lower ones. And that's why you saw yesterday, in a number of the markets in Nairobi, in a number of the markets in a number of counties, they had sent out Kanjo to collect money. But if they rebrand themselves and they use different models, we were just discussing with Bernard, and we're saying we've had a tax amnesty. How many people have known about it? But just during this small window, they have collected 30 billion. So when they are actually friendly, they collect more money than when they are coming out like pit bulls. So I think we just need to reevaluate. But it is possible for us to get the gap. It's possible for us to collect that revenue. That budget, whether or not it's there, whether or not it's big, I think it's something that it's possible. We just need to take a different look at it.
Right. So we are taking a quick break, but when we come back, I'd love to hear from you, Bernard, because Ruth says Kerry is the biggest enemy. Well, they're in the process of rebranding, actually, to the Kenya Revenue Service. So we'd learn to know from you, will that work? Because it seems the friendlier they get, the more money they collect. So allow us to take a quick break right here on our special coverage on the budget 2025-2026. We'll be back shortly. Please keep sending in your views, your comments. Our panelists will be addressing them when we come back. Stay with us. We'll be back shortly.